In the headlines, Korea's political parties struck a deal to pass a bill aimed at uncovering the truth behind the April ferry disaster, but the bereaved families reject the deal. Pope Francis says he couldn't stay neutral when it comes to the victims of the ferry disaster because their suffering was human. And Kurdish forces backed by U.S. airstrikes have regained control of the strategically important Mosul Dam from Islamic State militants. And for an in-depth discussion on what's happening in Iraq, the Iraqi ambassador to South Korea speaks to Primetime News. Welcome to Primetime News on this Tuesday. Live from Seoul, I'm Connie Lee.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for joining us this evening. Though the Pope went home on Monday, the leader of the Catholic Church had more to say about his trip on the airplane ride back to Rome.
That's right. He talked about a wide range of issues, but the comments gaining the most attention here in Korea were made about the bereaved families of the April ferry disaster. Connie Lee has more.
As promised, on his flight back to Rome from Korea, Pope Francis held one last press conference. Wearing the yellow ribbon, a symbol of the Sewol-ho ferry sinking, the Pope was asked if he was concerned that his meeting with the relatives of the victims would be misinterpreted politically. To that, Pope Francis was clear that in times like this, it's not about being neutral.
After half a day of wearing it, someone came close to me and said, "It is better to remove it. You should be neutral." But listen, one cannot be neutral about human pain. I responded in that way. That's how I felt.
He was also not neutral about the Korean victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery. He said the women, whom he met at a mass on his final day in Korea on Monday, retain their dignity to this day, even though they were exploited so cruelly. On the two Koreas, the Pope is praying and says he hopes the two countries will be reunited, stating that a divided country causes suffering.
There are many relatives that cannot come together. That's suffering, but a suffering of a country divided.
The Pope also spoke on other issues outside Korea, even commenting on the conflict in Iraq, saying the unjust aggressor against the minorities there, including Christians, must be stopped. He made clear, though, that he doesn't mean to make war. And with China, the Pope stated he's willing to go there even tomorrow, but only on one condition.
We respect the Chinese people. The Vatican Church only asks for liberty for its task, for its work there. There's no other condition.
While a trip to China is to be determined, the Pope's next trip to Albania is set for next month. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
So we can see that the Pope's landmark trip to South Korea left an impression that will not too soon be forgotten. Now, Connie Kim takes a look at how the Korean public and media reacted to his papal visit.
The first papal visit to Korea in 25 years is sure to remain in the hearts of Koreans for quite some time. Throughout his 5-day trip, Pope Francis's down-to-earth personality and heartfelt gestures were a fixture on the front pages. Most of them point out to his humility and care and say Korea has fallen deeply in love with the Pope. One headline reads, "The Pope who likes children stops 10 times to bless them," and another says, "Pope stops to console the families of the victims. The bereaved hope for changes in politics." And in reference to his final mass on Monday, when Pope Francis took the time to speak with the victims of sexual slavery during wartime, this headline reads, "7 former sex slaves sit in front, and Pope takes care of the weak until the end." The comments on Twitter echoed these sentiments. Korean users cheered the Argentinian Pope for listening to those who have largely gone silent in society. This tweet here reads, "Korean citizens appreciate the Pope's humble nature, which is something Korean citizens want from their own leaders." Another tweet says, "The Pope is a leader who truly unifies." And this one says that the pontiff is a leader the people can lean on. The Twitter user goes on to say that he wants the so-called Pope Francis syndrome to linger, and on the streets, people largely agreed.
It was impressive to see the Pope holding hands with the families of the victims of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster.
I visit Kotongnim village often. It was very touching that he met with the disabled there.
I was touched to see the Pope riding in such a compact car at a time when so many people are materialistic.
The pontiff's inaugural trip to Korea lasted just 5 days, but his outreach to those who are suffering and to those that can help them left a definite impression. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
And it seems the so-called Pope Francis effect not only boosted spirits here in Korea, but also left quite an impression on the Korean economy. Song Ji-sun has more.
Although the Pope himself stressed that putting the dignity of mankind is more important than any economic gains, his visit most definitely boosted domestic spending, which was dented by the Sewol-ho ferry disaster 4 months ago. The Seoul-based Hyundai Research Institute estimates Pope Francis' 5-day visit was worth some 500 billion won, or around $500 million US, in the form of brand publicity for the country and spending on accommodations, transportation, and other areas. That's equivalent to how much the Brazilian government estimated the Pope's visit brought to their country last year, and a similar total Korea saw during the APEC meeting held in the southern port city of Busan in 2005. The products used by the Pope had a direct impact on raising the brand awareness of several Korean companies, including Kia Motors and its compact Soul model, which was used by the Pope during his visit. Haijillo Seoksu mineral water also got a boost for keeping hundreds of thousands of Catholics hydrated during last Saturday's beatification ceremony in central Seoul. The religious sanctuaries the Pope visited are also anticipating a rise in visitors, but pundits say prompt measures must follow to label the shrines as benchmark tourist points. Korea's tourism organization says the stops on the Pope's visit will be developed into a travel program dubbed the Healing Pilgrimage Trail. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
After months of political bickering, Korea's two main political parties have finally agreed on a special bill that's aimed at uncovering the causes of the ferry disaster in April that killed more than 300 people. But it still remains to be seen whether the bill will pass in the upcoming plenary session because the bereaved families are not entirely happy with the bill. Our Ji Myung-gil reports.
The ruling Saenuri Party conceded on Tuesday to giving the committee charged with handling the Sewol-ho ferry investigation special prosecutorial powers as demanded by the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy.
4 spots on the panel will be allocated to lawmakers. 2 will be reserved for main opposition party and 2 for the ruling party. We'll appoint our share of the 2, only after seeking approval from the opposition and families of the ferry victims.
Both parties' floor leaders also agreed to start discussing the matter of compensation for the victims and surviving families and passage for a series of urgent bills in the upcoming plenary session next month.
93 urgent bills and 43 others that are pending will be pushed to the next plenary session. But only bills that are approved by chief policymakers from both parties will be passed.
The floor leaders of the rival parties promised to continue negotiations on the days for the Sewol-ho ferry hearings and who will be called in as witnesses. However, the family members of the Sewol-ho ferry victims stand opposed to today's deal, demanding all 4 panel members be recommended by the main opposition party. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
On the day of the Pope's arrival in Seoul last week, Pyongyang test-fired 5 short-range rockets into the East Sea. And now new analysis suggests that they were a new type of tactical missile that can potentially reach deep into South Korean territory. Our Kim Min-ji has the details.
North Korea is believed to have developed a new form of tactical missile that could pose a new threat on the Korean peninsula. According to joint analysis by South Korea and the United States, the North test fired 5 of the new rockets last Thursday into the East Sea. A source within South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff says the new model appears to be different from the North's existing KN-02 missiles or those fired from the 300mm rocket launcher, but maintains their advantages with a range of 200 kilometers and a warhead weight of 500 kilograms. The source said the new rocket, likely to be called the KN-10, is believed to use solid fuel and can be launched from a movable launcher. If fired from the military demarcation line separating the north and south, it could reach the central parts of South Korea.
It can load many more explosives. It is a threat because it does not require advanced preparation to launch and can be fired at any time.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is also believed to have purchased a new personal plane. Made in Ukraine, the Antonov 148 can seat up to 80 people, and unlike his previous plane, which was fitted with tables, this one looks more like a regular passenger jet. The plane, worth some $30 million shows Kim Jong-un's penchant for not just spending, but for traveling by air, unlike his father, who was notoriously afraid of flying. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And over in Iraq, Kurdish forces backed by U.S. airstrikes have regained control of the strategically important Mosul dam from Islamic State militants. Now, U.S. President Barack Obama called this a development a major step forward in the battle against IS militants. Hwang Jie tells us more.
Iraqi and Kurdish forces have taken back control of Mosul Dam from Islamic State militants. U.S. President Barack Obama said Monday that the victory, aided by American airstrikes, was a major step forward in the battle against IS militants who seized the dam earlier this month. Obama also pledged to continue a long-term strategy to defeat the insurgency. The dam, which is Iraq's largest, holds great strategic value as it controls the water supply for most of the country. The militants targeted the dam as part of ambitions to expand its hold in northern Iraq, where they have driven back Kurdish forces and sent thousands of minorities in the area fleeing for their lives. As the militants withdrew, they released a video message intended for the U.S., which said they would drown all of them in blood. The IS fighters also warned that it would attack Americans at any time and any place if U.S. airstrikes target their troops. The fighters have threatened to advance to the capital of Baghdad. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
And to discuss the situation in Iraq in depth, Iraqi ambassador to South Korea, Khalil Al-Mosawi, joins us here in the studio. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
So you said back in January, after decades of dictatorship, Iraq is still a democracy in its infancy. Do you think that the latest ISIS militant rebellion is a legitimate part of this growing up phase?
Well, ISIS is basically, it's a terrorist phenomenon. It's not only in Iraq, it's become an international issue. At the moment, they've been successful to attract fighters from over 70 countries from around the world, you know. So I think, yes, in a way, they do have advantage that the Iraq system, we are through a transitional period and we're still building our society. Of course, we are still building into the institutions, and these people have gained powers and energy and finance and equipment from across their support and helper.
And you don't look at this as a result of a religious conflict.
Right.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I refuse to consider it as a religious, as you say, but I think also the root of the problem of religious, it goes back to the previous regime who tried in the 90s to play the drum of differences on religious variation in the country. And also after the 2003, these drums gone louder. But at the end of the day, our conflict today is purely political conflict, not religious conflict.
So what's going on in Iraq? What kind of international reaction or response do you think this battle needs and deserves?
Right. What's happening in Iraq at the moment, if we make it in simple terms, that a terrorist group have managed to overrun a wide area of Iraq, which is full of ethnic minorities, as I said, and also the oil wealth, and is basically a strategic part of the country which connect between Iran, Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. You know, simply these people, they got nothing to do with the political process in Iraq, but they have their own agenda. Internationally, now Iraq is launching a war and facing a war against terrorism on behalf of the world. As I said, they are international terrorist organizations. We enjoy the support now from across the board of the international community, from the United Nations, United States, Europe, Korea, Asia, everywhere. But the most important support the Iraqi government have got at the moment is from within the Iraqi people themselves. The Iraqi people forget their differences and they focus to defeat terrorism.
Well, so that's certainly a lot of weight on your mind, and certainly a very grave situation over in your home country. But let's talk about what you do here in Korea. Maybe for a little bit. You certainly have stressed people-to-people exchanges as being equally important to economic relations and trade matters. What sorts of initiatives are you involved in here in Korea to foster more of this understanding between Koreans and Iraqis?
You know, my belief that defeating terrorism does not come by military or superiority only. I think it will come by also political, economical, social changes in Iraq, and also the settlement and stability of the Iraqi political regime. It depends on the economical developments of Iraq and the reconstruction of Iraq. Iraq has got $1 trillion of projects in the next 10 years. We are looking at Korea as our partner. We believe Korea has got a similarity to us in terms of history, in terms of people, natures, you know, and basically we believe we and Korea could couple together, because you have a lot of things we want and we have something you want. So that is the best way to build a relationship on mature and equal, you know, principles.
All right. Well, Ambassador, thank you so much for your time and insight tonight.
Thank you very much.
In the U.S. town of Ferguson, fresh protests have reportedly broken out over the deadly police shooting of an unarmed black teenager more than a week ago.
With more, we turn to Paul Yee at the news center. Paul, streets there were filled with another night of violence. Dozens of people were arrested, and authorities reportedly were under heavy gunfire.
That's right. Tensions are still running high in the St. Louis suburb where 18-year-old Michael Brown was killed. This as Missouri State Governor Jay Nixon ordered the National Guard to be deployed in order to restore calm after days of rioting. He then lifted the overnight curfew on Monday as protesters continue to demand that Officer Darren Wilson be held accountable for shooting Brown. U.S. President Barack Obama addressed the situation and urged the governor to ensure the National Guard troops were involved in limited and appropriate ways. The county prosecutor's office said a grand jury could begin hearing evidence against Wilson as soon as Wednesday to determine if he will be charged with the shooting. And moving on to the Middle East, Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas have agreed to extend a temporary ceasefire in the Gaza Strip for another 24 hours. The announcement on the fourth round of negotiations came just minutes before the earlier truce was to expire at the end of Monday. Egyptian mediators say they've been pushing both sides to reach a longer-term deal to end the weeks of fighting in Gaza, which has left more than 2,000 Palestinians and 67 Israelis dead. Meanwhile, the Israeli military is holding firm on its deployment of tanks and troops near the Gaza border amid the diplomatic efforts. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned that the army would have what he described as a very strong response if Hamas violated the renewed ceasefire. And finally, turning now to Japan, where a series of live fire drills have been held in a public display of the country's growing military power. Scores of Japanese tanks, attack helicopters, and troops pounded the foothills of Mount Fuji on Monday as part of coordinated exercises by special defense forces. The Defense Ministry said the annual event drew in thousands of spectators of all ages.
With all the fuss with China, Japan should have the equipment it needs, and I think that is the first step to build up the deterrent force.
The push by Tokyo to expand the country's military and its security role in the Asia-Pacific has drawn fierce criticism by neighboring countries such as China and Korea, who fear the move as a potential return to Japanese aggression in the region. And that wraps up our look at international stories making headlines around the world. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
And welcome to sports. Starting things off with some football. Korea has received a top seed for both men's and women's football tournaments at the upcoming Asian Games in Incheon. The Korea Football Association said the men's squad is one of 8 to receive a seed, which includes North Korea, but the two Koreas will not meet in the group stage, as the host nation South Korea automatically landed in Group A for the both men's and women's events. Now 30 nations will compete in the men's event and 11 for the women's. Previously, Korea won the bronze medal in the 2010 Asian Games. And next on the list, Uruguay's Luis Suarez is known for his football skills, but also his biting technique. He was suspended for 4 months by FIFA for biting Italian defender Giorgio Chiellini during the World Cup in Brazil. But Suarez took to the pitch in his first return match, coming in as a late substitute for Barcelona in a preseason friendly against Lyon. Now, many are wondering, how is this possible? Suarez was initially banned from all soccer activity for 4 months for the bite incident. But in a strangely underreported story, the football's court of arbitration downgraded the ban. It ruled that Suarez will be allowed to practice and play in non-competitive friendlies, clearing him for Monday's match. And moving on to some KBO action, let's head over to the Mokdong Stadium in Seoul, where the LG Twins and the Nixon Heroes are exchanging runs. Starting the pitching game, Ryu Jae-gu for the LG Twins and Andy Van Hicken for the Nixon Heroes. Now Nixon gets on board. Park Byung-ho at bat smashes the ball to the right, back, and is out of here for a 2-run shot, marking the 40th of the year. Third inning, LG trailing by 4. Chung Sung-hoon returns the favor to the left. See you later, alligator, and he puts up 2. Not done yet. Park Yong-taek drills the pitch. And see ya, LG ties 4-4. Currently Nixon trailing in the bottom of the 9th, 7-5. Let's check out some other games. Hana in a comfortable lead in the bottom of the 9th, 10-7. Tucson beating SK in the 9th, 9-5. Now finishing things off with men's tennis. Fans may be for some disappointment as Rafael Nadal says he will not be competing in the U.S. Open this year due to a wrist injury he incurred during practice last month. The Spaniard posted an official announcement on his Facebook page. We won't see him at Flushing Meadows, meaning he won't be able to defend the title he won against Novak Djokovic last year. Now Nadal's all-time second place with 14 Grand Slam singles titles, trailing closely behind Roger Federer, who's won 17. That wraps it up. This has been Kim Hyun-bin. Always stay tuned to updates from the world of sports.
Hello and welcome to Arirang Weather. I'm Kim Bo-kyung. It has stopped raining here in Seoul, but heavy showers continue to stick around in some regions down south. In fact, a heavy rainfall watch has been issued for parts of Gyeongsangbuk-do province as well as the southern part of Jeju. Taking a closer look at rainfall levels, Most southern regions should get up to 150 millimeters, while anywhere from 10 to 60 is in forecast for Seoul. Also, at the moment, the nation continues to be under the influence of a low pressure front from the East Sea, resulting in on and off showers down south. Tomorrow's rain will begin in Jeju, making its way slowly up north in the afternoon before hitting the central regions by the evening, and the system will stick around through Thursday. On to Wednesday's readings. Seoul hits 28, while Gwangju and Busan reach 26. As for other places, Jeju tops out at 26, Dokdo and Mount Kumgang at 24. That'll do it for now, but I'll be back with more updates after midnight. See you then.
And that's primetime news for this Tuesday. Thanks for watching. I'm Sean Liu.
And I'm Kang Tae. Enjoy your evening. We'll see you soon.